Hey guys, I got something a little bit different for you this time. Usually when I do reviews, I try to make them something that people will see, that are something that's like a big blockbuster or a really bad film that people are talking about, or just a really popular film. However, there are a bunch of movies that I do see that I don't talk about, and I think it would be cool if I talked about some of them. Maybe some of them will catch your interest, and I'm just here to spread my love of movies, and so hopefully this can be a new thing. I hope to do this at the end of each month to try to catch up with movies I've seen in that particular month. This particular video will be focusing on January and February movies. I would have done this back in beginning of February, but I just came up with this idea, and honestly, I'd like to share with some of the January films I saw. So let's hope this works, and let's get started. Insidious: The Last Key was something I really wasn't interested in. I hadn't seen any of the Insidious movies at that point, but recently I did watch at least the first two, and I thought I at least had enough knowledge of the series to go into it not completely blind. So I saw Insidious 4, and I really enjoyed it. It's getting a lot of bad news. It's not very good, but I thought it was really good. It had compelling performances and some genuinely good scares, but not as good as the first two, especially not as good as the first one. My biggest problem with the film is the comedy. The comedy in these films, at least these first two, is just really bad, and this one is definitely the worst of the bunch. But altogether, I really like the film. So Insidious 4 gets a 6 out of 10. The Commuter was a film I saw, and it's a Liam Neeson film like any other. It's kind of generic, but not completely terrible. It's very predictable, but it's got some fun moments with some interesting action and some twists you see coming. But for a January film, it's really not that bad and doesn't deserve to be bashed for just being kind of average at best. And so the Commuter gets a 5 out of 10. Hostiles was a great slow burn western that stars Christian Bale, and it was just very good with great cinematography. It's a very slow movie, so it might be a little longer than it needs to be, but it's really interesting and it's got a lot to say. Christian Bale has a very good character arc, and the action scenes are very great, but it does have a slow pace that might turn some viewers off, and it's very much like a book turned to film, if that's the best way to describe it. But it's still a very good film, and I think you should go see it. Hostiles gets a 7 out of 10. Early Man is a film made by the creators of Chicken Run, and is this really cute story with great animation about the dawn of man. It's very fun with great comedy, and just this claymation style filmmaking is just so wonderful. However, I don't think it is as good as Chicken Run or Wallace and Gromit, but it is still a really great film in the library. And so Early Man gets an 8 out of 10. Samson is a recent PureFlix movie that's getting a lot of bad rap, but is actually a film that's pretty much okay. It's not that good, but it's not bad either, like critics are saying. It's Just, it's very cheap, but they don't have the budget that a big epic would have. And what they have is pretty okay. With some interesting cinematography, some good directing, and some actually compelling acting. And altogether, it's a okay film. Samson gets a 6 out of 10. The 1517 to Paris is easily Clint Eastwood's worst film. It's just very bland with really bad acting. It was a really poor choice to have the real people that partook in this real life event be in the movie, but they're the least of the movie's problems because the story is just not really there and there's not enough to actually make a 90-minute movie, which this movie clocks in at right around 90 minutes. Honestly, this movie didn't need to be made, or at least needed a better script. The 1517 gets a 2 out of 10. Proud Mary's trailers made this film look amazing, but the film is actually very dull. It's kind of a send up to the 70s exploitation films, but aside from the very opening scene, it's not very 70s. It's more 90s, and just not that interesting of a film. The acting is pretty good in it, but it's just kind of boring and bland, and not really what a blaxploitation film should be. Proud Mary gets a 4 out of 10. The Open House is a horror film that's getting a bad rap for being just really bad, and it's honestly just below average. It's not very good, but it's got some interesting cinematography, some really good acting, honestly, but the twists and turns of it are so bad and so generic, and the ending just forgets to give you any answers. And that's why The Open House gets a 4 out of 10. Peter Rabbit is a very underrated kids film. It's not as deep as like Paddington 2, but it's honestly a film with a lot of heart and really some fun comedy from Domhnall Gleeson, who's fantastic in his role. The only problem is James Corden is just unbearable to watch. I'm not a fan of him. But altogether, it's a really fun movie, and it's not worth the trashing it's getting. Peter Rabbit gets a 7 out of 10. Den of Thieves is just a bland action film that has no reason to be as long as it is, clocking in at 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's very ambitious, but not that good. Gerard Butler's pretty good in it, but the story around it just can't hold up to him. It's just very bland and honestly very boring, except for the third act, which does pick up and is very engaging, but to get there, you have to go through a slog of other scenes that could have been easily cut. Den of Thieves gets a 4 out of 10. Mute is another Netflix film that came out that's getting a lot of bad rap. This was directed by Duncan Jones, who made Source Code and Warcraft, and has this world that's kind of like Blade Runner, but not. And it's not very good, but it's passable. Um, Alexander Skarsgård plays a mute man in the film trying to find his girlfriend, and he's very compelling in the film. The acting is very good. It's just the story and the world itself is just mushed together and just not that good. Mute gets a 4 out of 10. And that's my quick review for all the films I missed reviewing from January to February. I hope to do these catch up videos every once in a while during every month. and hopefully I can show just how many films I see by the end of the year. Um, this was really fun to do, and I hope this gets a good response. Well, that's all I have. So, if you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next review.